Yes. So thank you, everyone, and we still have 1 hour, so stay in the session.
Thank you.
Yes, Saira.
Larissa, thank you for inviting us. We at Inclusive are really, really grateful to be invited today. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Inclusive Accessibility Design session. I have with me here Saba, my colleague. So I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Saira, and I work as a business development director for partnerships at Inclusive. I identify myself as a proud person of determination. Person of determination is a term that you are going to be hearing from me and Saba during this session because it is a term that we use here in UAE. It is a term given to people with special needs or people with disabilities. And I am a person living with mobility differences. I use a wheelchair. And now I'd like Saba to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Saba, and I'm the front-end developer and technology projects lead at Inclusive, and I'm really happy to be here today. So let's get started. So
Absolutely.
Saira, I want to ask you, what is Inclusive? What do you exactly do at Inclusive, and how is it working out for you so far?
Uh, Thank you for that question, Sabah. So I'll start by explaining to you what inclusive is and how it started. Hafsa Kadir actually conceptualized inclusive platform in 2019. Inclusive began in a heart and mind that views the world through a lens of equality and social justice. Learning through her brother Ahmed Kadir, a talented person of determination who lives with spina bifida, Hafsa learned through real life experiences that any disabled person is only limited by societal, institutional, accessibility, and financial barriers. Hafsa observed her mother, a single parent, her siblings fight for Ahmad's right to equal emergency care during earthquake drills at school. She noticed the hardships her parent faced during hospital visits. She recognized that first reaction of teachers, doctors, caretakers towards any activity that Ahmed wanted to participate was lined with barriers created by stereotypical perceptions of people with disabilities or general lack of accessibility. She started to imagine a world where any single parent would never feel alone and could own means of connecting with other like minded people anywhere in the world. Hafsa dreamed of a world where people like her brother recognized their own talent, skills, and abilities. She started to actually draw sketches of an online hub of inclusion, a mobile app where people come together and share view from the lens that people of determination are equal. One, she started to share this accessibility at every platform, and she created an app. She dreamed of an app and named it Inclusive. Today, Inclusive is an app that connects all people of determination to jobs, events, and opportunities. What I do at Inclusive is I build relationships with B2B, B2G, and startup partnerships. These partnerships are keeping in mind not only raising awareness about inclusion of people of determination at a workplace, but also in products and services. It's not only raising awareness about them, but to action them as well. These partnerships, which I create, play a major role as these are with departments of HR and communications. These departments are direct decision makers about the impact of hiring and spreading a message of equal opportunities for people of determination. So, Sabha, now it's your turn to answer some questions. And what I'd like to know is, what does your work at Inclusive look like, and why is it important to take accessibility into consideration when someone is creating a product?
That's a really good question. So, talking a little about my work at Inclusive, it's challenging yet exciting at the same time. It involves a lot of coding, and I work on different features. So, my work involves making sure that they look good, and at
Mhm.
the same time, they're functional and usable by all. So, when designing a web page or a product, if you don't take accessibility into consideration, you have successfully ignored your users. I would like to quote Frank Camero here. People ignore design that ignore people, and we really don't want that. Since 15% of the world lives with some sort of disability, which is approximately 1 out of 7 people, it is our responsibility as designers and developers to embrace accessibility. So a product that has been designed while keeping all range of accessibilities in mind ends up being a better product for everyone. So moving on, Saira, can you please share a little bit about your journey with equal, or should I say unequal, job opportunities?
Sure. So let me begin by sharing with my personal experience before this employment of mine at Inclusive. So previously at my work experience, as I shared, I live with a mobility difference and it didn't allow me to use a regular washroom. And I requested my employer to allow me an accommodation by having an accessible washroom at the workplace. But the employer thought that without any research or anything, that allowing a person of determination to have an accessible washroom only for one person would be expensive, and I didn't get that opportunity at my workplace. Unfortunately, the organization closed down after 3 years, and I stopped working at it. What I thought then was, instead of me asking for a change in the workplace, maybe I could ask them to accommodate from home. And it was not the pandemic, it was pre-pandemic, and it will go down in history that during the pandemic, everyone was working from home. You and I currently are joining this session from home. And it literally had to take a pandemic for people to change their mindsets about a work from home accommodation. And I started my journey with Inclusive with the work from home accommodation in 2019. And today I am leading the business development side and still working from home. So Saba, I'd like to share my screen and show how I make the connect for people of determination through the platform. And while I do share my screen, while I go through the tabs and find them, what I want you to share is, what is your favorite feature of the platform that you've built?
Yeah, sure. So the favorite feature on the Inclusive platform is, I think, easily the ASL reactions that we have. It's just the ASL equivalent of the normal emojis and reactions that you see on the other platforms. And it's just sign language depictions of different emojis like happy, sad, angry, celebrate, that you'll just get to see in a minute. But they're easily my favorite feature on the Inclusive platform.
Okay, let me know, Saba, when you see my screen so that I can continue.
Yeah,
Is it still loading?
Yeah, it's still loading. Okay, yep, we can see your screen.
So these are the emojis that you were speaking of. It's still loading, because it's a little heavy. So these are the emojis?
Yes, exactly. These were the ASL reactions I was just speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a nice way of spreading a little awareness about ASL and how people with hearing differences would normally use a sign language to communicate and interact with each other.
So these actually represent people with hearing differences as well.
Exactly. So I think it's a nice little gesture for them.
So Saba, do share with us how did you build this platform, keeping in mind the universal design, the accessible design principles, and what are WCAG? What is WCAG?
Absolutely. So WCAG is short for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. That represent a single shared standard of web accessibility. So it's essentially a set of rules that basically tell you how you can fulfill the design principles in order to make your web content accessible. So it covers everything, right, from the right font to the minimum acceptable contrast ratio. So moving on to the accessibility by design principles, which you have four main ones. The first one being content should be perceivable. So this means that even if a person has, for example, is visually deficit or has difficulty hearing, the content should still be clear and usable to them. So keeping this in mind, I have used colors throughout the platform that satisfy the WCAG minimum contrast ratio requirement. And there's a really good contrast analyzer tools to check the contrast. Then I've used sans serif fonts throughout the platform as well, which improve readability for really everyone, but especially for people with different learning differences, like, for example, dyslexia. And I would also like to talk a little about alt text for images, which is essentially an image in words. And why are those words important is because those words describe what's going on in the image. So a person, for example, using a screen reader would be able to know what's going on in the image without having to actually see it. So then we have another thing which are Aria labels, which is basically labels for functional components such as buttons. So what an Aria label on a button would do was it would actually tell, again, a person with screen reader what the button actually does without them having to click it. So this actually leads to an equal user experience for a person regarding their ability. So moving on to the second principle, which is content should be operable. So here you need to ask yourself, can any user, despite their different abilities, operate and navigate through your site? If the answer is no, then I think you have a lot to focus on, because not everyone can use a mouse. So there needs to be an alternative way to use your site. To ensure this, I have made all functionality fully accessible using a keyboard. So keyboard navigation is really crucial for accessibility. Then moving on to the third principle, which is content should be understandable. Content needs to be presented in such a way that it avoids confusion. So I have tried to achieve this on the platform by having a predictable, consistent structure using very clear, simple language that's easy to understand. If you can see, there's a lot of white space that we're using here. There's almost no clutter. So it's very easy for a person with, for example, autism to really focus on what's important here. I have also completely avoided the use of pop-ups and any flashing content that might be brutal for a user who reacts negatively to excessive stimulation. Like, it could actually lead to seizures for, again, people with different cognitive differences, like people with autism. Then lastly, the fourth principle that I want to talk about is that content should be robust. This is also super important because it means that content needs to be compatible with a vast majority of browsers, with different devices, with different forms of assistive technology, such as a screen reader. So all these things, all these four principles kind of come together. For example, if you miss out on making your web content accessible by a keyboard, or you miss out on alt text or Aria labels, this would mean that a visually different person using a screen reader wouldn't really be able to use your website. It wouldn't really make sense to them. So it's really important that you make sure you're keeping all these abilities in mind when developing, to ensure, again, that it's a similar user experience for all the users.
So would it mean that following these principles is not only beneficial to people of determination, or say people with disabilities, right?
Right. So it's a common misconception that these accessibility fixes or accessibility or following the accessibility principles only benefits people with disabilities. Actually working on on making your product more accessible not only benefits people with disabilities, but it makes your product better for everyone else as well. So an example that I would like to add here is of closed captioning for videos. So generally, we would like to think that it's for the benefit of people with hearing differences. But the fact is that it also helps people or users using your product in a loud environment, like a subway, or someone not that well versed in that specific language. So it's
Yeah,
going to benefit that person as well. So really, like all these things are going to benefit all your users.
absolutely. And that does make sense that allowing an equal user experience and equal opportunity to use the platform.
Yeah, it's definitely crucial. So, Saira, can you please tell us how do we use the inclusive platform for hiring purposes?
Absolutely. So I'll share with you the the app and how inclusive platforms allows hiring of people of determination. So I'll give you an example of a job role that a person or an organization could be looking to hire. Let's say inclusive is looking to hire. I've added a sample here for everyone to see. And let's say inclusive has an opening for a graphic designer who they are looking to hire. So what a person can do is if they want to add a job, they can add industry, the employment type, the experience level, the location. What required is skills and education, what they would like to add, the perks and benefits. And I will share about the accessibility accommodations that the inclusive platform allows an employer to add the accommodations, and these accommodations can be added in an automated way. The description of the accommodations is given for the user here, and let's say that they want to hire a graphic designer in their organization. So instead of thinking of who to exclude, an employer can think of who to include. For example, if they would like to add closed captioning in their virtual meeting software, what that will make this job description accessible. Let's say that inclusive has an office and they want to make it accessible. If they are using closed captioning in their virtual meeting, it makes a graphic designer's work very easy to follow it during a meeting. I'll give an example of Microsoft Teams. If you're logged in from your Microsoft account, you can choose the option to allow live captions. You can interact, you can read, you can interact with the chat with your team members. Automated instant messages is also available on the Microsoft Teams, and that will also allow you to interact with the employee. If your workplace has accessible washroom, you can add that. Addition of ramp, or if you have a lift in your workplace, you can add that. And having wider doorways and corridors will aid a person using mobility aid who is enabled by that to actually come into your office space and contribute to it. So I'll also like to share how the disclaimer of the equal employment is also open for people who want to employ people with determination, people with disabilities. Let's say it's not inclusive, it is XYZ. So instead of inclusive, it will give automated options for XYZ. At XYZ, diverse inclusive culture is vital to their mission and offer opportunities for all abilities and backgrounds. What I'd also like to mention here is accessibility is not one size fits all. Every person's needs and requirements are different. So to keep that open conversation with the organization, if a person of determination would like to request something, this mindset of open conversation will also allow a person to request for accommodations if required. So this is how we do the.
So I think by adding in these accessibility accommodations as well as the disclaimer for equal employment, I think it's a very welcoming gesture for applicants of all abilities, right? And it also shows that how small changes that they can make to their workplaces ensures that a person with a different ability can still be productive, can still work really well, just as any other person would.
Absolutely. People usually think that there's too much to it, but if started with accessibility, it definitely leads to inclusion.
Okay, so what if someone in the audience right now thinks that they may have a job, but they don't really know how to approach a person of determination for it?
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and answer that question.
Yeah,
So
sure.
what someone from maybe listen to this session or listening in the audience can do is assess the job description that they want to put out. Think of it in a way that is not discriminatory. Assess the job description first of all, ensuring that it is not leaving out anyone. And after that, if they would want, they can sign up to the platform, create their organization profile, and they can start posting on the inclusive job portal.
Amazing. So is it actually that easy?
So, the journey of accessibility and inclusion, like you shared how a platform can keep on building, same, it goes for inclusion for people of determination. You start with hiring one person of determination. If you're not, really very confident about how they will do teamwork, maybe hire them for a part-time job. If you still think that you won't be still comfortable, invite them to intern, allow them to come in for hourly basis, allow them to come on project basis. And that is how, people of determination can easily be integrated in a workplace. What,
I think
uh, yeah, go ahead.
this would actually lead to this amazing realization that a person of determination can perform just as well like any other candidate, just given a few accommodations. It's not like they won't be able to perform well or they won't be able to have the same kind of productivity. They can. So I think
Absolutely.
this would really help changing the mindset all across.
Absolutely. And Saba, what I'd like to share is at Inclusive, there are a lot of people of determination who are qualified, who have that qualifications that require to fulfill, many job roles, but due to lack of accessibility or due to lack of experience, it really, really, hinders their input in an organization.
Definitely. So, do you think this is because making a workplace accessible is expensive?
So Larissa is here. Larissa, do you want to join this?
Thank you. I dropped in because we also have some awesome panelists and some awesome attendees that would like to join and in the chat.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But I'd be happy to maybe switch the discussion, the nice discussion, into LinkedIn event because I really like the awareness that you're trying to maybe share in a really cool way. And I think a lot of people and a lot of attendees would really benefit if they maybe ask questions and get maybe your input and your experience out of it, from organization to individuals to teams maybe that are just joining to brainstorm ideas. And I think I'll drop you again the LinkedIn event, and I think we can continue all the chat there. So this would be great for everyone. But of course, feel free to recap the talk.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what Saba and I were trying to share was accessibility is something that is an ongoing process. It's a solution that is on a journey. When you start with one step, it always allows and welcomes to people of determination with multiple abilities.
Definitely. So, to kind of summarize, I feel like we need to involve actual people of determination in the whole process of making the environment, whether it's online or offline, accessible so that you're actually designing with rather than for people of determination. So, I think working on that actual feedback continuously over time will make your product more and more accessible.
So Larissa, do we join the link that you have shared in the chat?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Saira and Saba, for this awesome talk. And of course, please join the LinkedIn event, and everyone would be joining there and ideating and asking questions. And I think this would be really helpful to our community. And thank you so much once again, and thank you for the inclusive team and everyone. Now we will go to our last session, which is the discussion panel related to AI for accessibility and the role for startups. Now, Mr. Roberto will be the moderator, so maybe